We have apologies from Tricia Brown and Pauline Mackenzie.
Okay, Councillor Dr. Barnard.
Yes, and Councillors Skinner and Angel.
Councillor Skinner and Angel, thank you.
Councillor Bandari.
And Councillor Bandari. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you very much indeed. The next item on the agenda is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting that was held on the 10th of November. Now, I do note that there was declarations of interest on item was missed in error. So therefore the minutes of the 10th of November will be amended so that declaration of interest item be removed. Before I ask Councillor Brossard to second the motion, please can members indicate if you have any issues with the accuracy of those minutes. An online mic.
Nothing, no.
No. Okay, then Councillor Brossard, are you happy to second that?
I am, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. The next item is the declarations of interest, and the full text of declaration of interest is set out in the agenda. If any member has a disclosable pecuniary interest or an affected interest to declare, please indicate and I'll come to you in turn. Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to, agenda item 9, I have to declare an interest being a board member of the joint venture.
And Indy, you'd like to declare an interest?
Yes, Chair. Indy Batty, Solicitor for the Council. I'd like to declare an interest in item 10. The applicant is a family member. I can confirm that I have not been involved in the consideration of this application, and that I will leave the hybrid meeting when item 10 is considered.
Thank you, Indy. As discussed earlier, what we'll do is we'll swap round items 10 and 11 so that we hear item 11 first and then item 10 last, so that when you leave, you don't have a need to come back.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, would you consider doing that for item 9 as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll take item 10 and then... no, we'll take... Right, we'll take item 9. All right, we'll take item 11, then item 9, then item 10. Right, okay. And please remind me if I forget. Okay, this next item on the agenda is the consideration of any urgent items. I haven't been advised of any.
No, none notified.
Thank you very much indeed. So therefore we come on to the first planning application, which is agenda item 5, which is land at Malt Hill Farm, Malt Hill Warfield, the proposed erection of an agricultural livestock barn. So over to you, Sarah.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. If I just share my screen. Can you just confirm that you can see that for me, Chair?
Yes, I can see it. If you can make it slightly larger, that would be really useful.
Of course. I'll just move to the next slide, which is a bit clearer. Is that okay?
That's great, thank you.
Lovely. Okay. So this is an application for the erection of an agricultural livestock barn at land at Malt Hill. The application has been reported to the Planning Committee following the receipt of more than 5 objections. Members are firstly directed to the yellow sheet for updates. So this is a site that lies to the west of Malt Hill and comprises commercially managed pastureland, which is grazed by livestock. So if we just run through the plans, so as you can see, this is Malt Hill here, this is Ascot Road here. This is an application for the proposed barn, which is indicated in this location here. There's also an application which was for a barn which was considered under agricultural permitted development rights, which is the barn located in this location here. If I just zoom out a little bit, this is just a close-up of the barn subject to this application identified in red here. I zoom out a little bit more, you can see it in the context of Malt Hill here, Ascot Road here. You can note there's some residential properties along Malt Hill in this location. These are some elevation drawings of the proposed building. So the side elevations with livestock gates on both side elevations, double doors on the front and rear elevations. A floor plan, which just basically indicates the livestock gates and the double doors either side. And then this is an aerial photograph, which I will just zoom into. So you have Malt Hill, which lies here. You've got Ascot Road, which lies here. The proposed barn, which is subject to this application, will be located in the land parcel in this sort of area up here. And if I just scroll through some photos, so this is a view looking from Malt Hill itself. So this is one of the boundaries of the site which bounds onto Malt Hill. The barn will be located behind the tree line back in this location. And then if I just scroll out a little bit, some rather wintry scenes, as we can see, a bit too much. This is looking from the entrance from Malt Hill. So this is the existing field gate, which goes into the site at present. This is just a further view. The field gate is located here with Malt Hill behind the hedgerow here. It's just a view of the existing track, which leads into the site. The proposed barn will be located back here behind this tree belt here. And then just a further photo, just again looking from Malt Hill, the barn will be located behind this tree belt here. I'll just go back up to the plans. So the site is located within the green belt. Both local plan policy and the National Planning Policy Framework state that the construction of buildings for agriculture and forestry in the green belt is in principle appropriate development. As the proposal is considered appropriate development in the green belt as it relates to the erection of an agricultural barn, there is no requirement to demonstrate very special circumstances in order to justify the development. A planning condition is recommended that will require the barn to be demolished in the event that it ceases to be used for agricultural purposes. The proposed barn would not appear visually intrusive to surrounding dwellings within the locality of the site, which are located along Malt Hill here. There are some further dwellings along Ascot Road here and further properties and buildings located to the north here. The proposal would also not appear prominent from surrounding public vantage points due to its siting. The design and external finish of the building would be considered appropriate to the rural setting of the site, again just showing the elevation drawings there. There are no highway safety implications which would result from the proposal, as agricultural uses can occur on the land without the need for planning permission. The application is therefore recommended for conditional approval as set out in the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Members, as I explained earlier, this application complies with our public speaking regulations, and so therefore, can I ask Mr. Hobbs, sir? Sorry? Yeah, if you'd like, are you speaking?
Yeah, not on, it's on item 6. It's on Newhurst.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I've got my speakers. Who's speaking for this one? Nobody?
I don't think we have any.
All right,
It
okay.
was eligible, which is what I said.
So it was eligible. Sorry about that, Mr. Hobbs. You wouldn't like to speak for this one as well, would you? Okay. In that case, we go to questions from members. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. I noticed but in the report and in the supplementary, the conditions state that the use is to be for agricultural use, and that should it not be, should it cease to be used for that, that it's to be demolished. Now, I've had a bit of experience of this in the past, where a barn has been turned into an MOT centre, and it kept its agricultural use because they kept a tractor in the corner of the barn. So how will we, and can the language be tightened such that it is substantially for agricultural use, so that if they try and creep another use in there, we can enforce strongly on the agricultural use only. Thank you.
Sarah?
It may be a question that I may need some help with from Max or legal on. I mean, my understanding is that obviously this building, if it is to be granted planning permission, its lawful use will be solely for agriculture. Should that use deviate to something else, then obviously that is something that we could look at as an enforcement matter. I mean, whether we have got powers to strengthen the condition over and above what we've already stated, I don't know if Max or Indy, there are any sort of views that you would have on that.
Okay, I'll hand over to Max. Max Baker, Head of Planning. Max.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I would point you to the proposed condition on page 1 of the supplementary, which does specifically say the building shall be used only for the purposes of agriculture. So that, to my mind, doesn't allow for other uses to come into parts of the building. Unless legal have a view sort of otherwise to that would be my view on that one.
Okay, Indy, have you got a view on that, please?
I agree, Chair, that I think the condition is specific enough and solely for agricultural purposes. I don't think we can strengthen it any further, and that no other uses would be allowed under that condition.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Hayes?
Just for clarification on that, because I also had a barn that when you looked at the barn, it had hay bales in front of it, but it wasn't until you went round the back of the hay bales that you found a complete building, a living accommodation.
You can't hide it. You can't hide properties anymore. There was a very famous instance up in the.
Well, can I just carry on there? Therefore, is there this is under the legal part. Is there a possibility that it is registered, or can it, or should it be registered with Land Registry, that there is a condition of such? Just for the future even. This is something that should be looked at.
Do you have a view on that?
There's nothing that can be done in terms of putting it on their actual title documents. The planning permission will be on the register, and like you said, there has been a previous enforcement decision where you can no longer hide a residential dwelling. So the actual time for enforcement will start to run once that comes to the knowledge of the council. So I don't think that that'll be an issue anymore.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this discussion, but should we not, Indy, explain or be a bit more explicit on agricultural uses? Because I notice on some of our conditions they are quite specific. Agricultural, taking Councillor Birch's point, is a bit, it's quite open.
It's defined under the planning legislation, so it would only be the uses that are allowed under the planning legislation.
So just to take the point that Councillor Birch was pursuing, if they put in tractors and continued another business, we could take enforcement action. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And Councillor Virgo, just to step in there, I have set out the definition of agriculture at paragraph 9.16. It's set out in section 336 of the Act, and it basically has a definition of everything that is considered as an agricultural use. So obviously, if anything does take place that falls outside of that definition as set in the legislation, that is something that obviously could then potentially constitute a change of use that falls outside of an agricultural use and then could be subject and liable to enforcement action.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other questions? Councillor Balibo? We'll just wait for Councillor Balibo's microphone to come alive.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just not clear with the 10-year thing. What does that actually mean? It's not clear to me. Can somebody
So
just
we
explain?
Yeah, of course. So we have actually updated the condition, any reference to 10 years in the report. We actually have removed that now. So when the agenda was originally published, we had stated that the condition is set out in number 4 that talked about the barn being demolished in the event that an agricultural use ceased within 10 years. That condition's now actually been updated, so it actually removes any reference to a time scale. So as set out in a supplementary report, the condition will simply state that the building should be used solely for agriculture, and if that use were to cease, the building shall then be demolished.
So the 10 years have been removed, and it would be forever.
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. Can I just also ask, on some of the report or part of the report, it does mention that the building will be demolished and it stops there. But on the condition 4, it does state that the land will be returned to its former use and all that. Could we make that very clear everywhere else, and instead of just stopping at demolished?
So it is covered, like you state in.
It is covered.
Oh,
I'm just saying, yeah. I'm just saying everywhere else in the document. It's in the supplementary.
I mean, it's the requirement of the condition that will require the lands to be returned back to and made good following the demolition works. Did I carry that forward on the supplementary reports?
I read it earlier this evening.
Good, thank you. Yeah, but it is covered by the planning condition. I mean, it may not have been explicitly said in the actual agenda report itself, but it is covered by the condition. And that is what, in the event that this building does have to be demolished, should it be not used for agriculture in the future, then the condition would require anybody to then, you know, make the land good following the demolition of the building.
Chair, just lastly, for clarification, if we go ahead with, or if this is granted tonight, would at any point, would that piece of land be considered as brownfield in the future?
So, no, so at the moment, if land is specified as agricultural land and it's located within the green belt, it actually is excluded from the definition of what would be previously developed land under the National Planning Policy Framework. So we would consider it, you know, it's an agricultural site. Currently, it's a greenfield site. So, you know, even if it has got agricultural buildings on, agricultural uses are specifically excluded from the definition of previously developed land under Greenbelt legislation in the framework.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move the officer's recommendation then, which is on page 32 and as amended by page 1 of the supplementary report. If I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Brossard. Members, this is before us. As you can see, there's been a number of objections. Most of the objections were worried about this property being turned into a residential use at some point in the future, which, you know, I can understand that. But you've heard the officer's explanation that should the barn not be used for agricultural use, which is a use that is specifically set out in planning legislation, it must be demolished and the land returned to agricultural use. There is no ambiguity there. It is a fact. So it cannot at any time under this planning permission be given permission to be turned into a dwelling or commercial premises. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly to follow on from what you said, there were 43 resident objections. Equally, Moorfield Parish Council raised no objection. I felt the site visit that took place on Saturday was actually extremely helpful in understanding the proposed building is actually in a dip. And when you look at the report, the nearest properties are 200 metres and 280 metres away. I think the other consideration also, Chairman, is that environmental health raised no objections. And I know that sometimes there have been concerns in the past with regard to noise and smell. but the fact that they raised no objection, I think is a material consideration, and that's why I'm supporting the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Would any other member wish to speak? Councillor Virgo.
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank those people that came on Saturday in rather freezing weather. And it was very successful, as Councillor Brassard said. And I think it's really good that, you know, we've taken action that can't be turned into a house. I think that's very good of our legislators. The other thing I'd just like to add, I think I've been on this council, for 12 years, and it's the first time I've ever seen anything on a planning committee going to look at agricultural things for real. So it's great that a farm is still working for loads and loads of sheep. So God bless them.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? No one online? Okay, in that case, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour to approve, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. We move on then to agenda item 6, which is land north of Newhurst Gardens, which is who's giving that?
It's
Sarah.
me, Chair Sarah
Thank you.
Fryer. Thank you. I'll just share my screen now. So please let me know, Chair, when you can see it.
Yes, I can see it. Thank you. If
Thank
could,
you.
Is the rest of it larger? Because that's quite small.
Okay,
That's lovely. Thank you.
thank you. So this is a reserve matters application for 50 dwellings on land north of Newhurst Gardens in Moorfield. It is before planning committee tonight due to the number of objections raised. Your attention is drawn to the supplementary report containing additional objections and confirmation that tree protection conditions were included on the outline planning permission. This one. So the application site is located north of Newhurst Gardens and north of Warfield Street in the area of Countryside. You have some listed buildings to the south, Apple Tree Cottage, Pear Cottage, and you've got the grounds of Warfield House to the east. So this is a reserve matters application following the outline application that was approved at appeal stage. So here we have the proposal in terms of its layout. Proposed layout has a central avenue going through the site and dwellings located either side of it. You have on-surface swales and trees forming the avenue through there. Courtyard development, and then larger properties around the outside facing onto the open space and landscape buffer that wraps around the site. So this is the location of the affordable housing. The R is for rented, the I is for intermediate where it's a shared ownership. The yellow are 2-bed properties, the darker blue are 3-bed, and the light blue is 4-bed. So this is the landscape master plan showing in a bit more detail where the on-surface swales are and the attenuation basins located around the site. You can also see the number of trees. These are existing trees which are to be retained. They are semi-mature trees, so will provide some instant landscape benefit. This is the parking plan. So there are 2 properties with tandems, so 3 tandem spaces here. You have visitor car parking spaces in green located here. There's 3 along here and 2 here. You've also got 1 up here. All parking on site on plot is in accordance with our policy. Cross section of the swales that will line the roadways with tree pit details. And here are the street scenes of the proposed development. So I can zoom in, see in a bit more detail. So this is one side, the western side of the central street that goes through with the subservient cul-de-sac leading off. Here you have the 2.5-storey properties that are located either side with slightly shorter dwellings either side of the highway. The rest of the dwellings are 2-storey with single-storey garages. And then as we go down the street scenes, you get some of the examples of the larger properties, the green walkways get through the site. Down at the bottom here, there are some larger garages with studio offices proposed above, and they are located generally the larger properties towards the edge of the site. Now we go on to more detailed drawings of just a few of the house types. There are too many to show all of them in the presentation. So here we have an example of a 5-bedroom property, accommodation over the garage, gable feature and tile hanging to the front. Again, another property with some tile hanging detail to a gable frontage and bay window details. Another more 3-bed property is slightly smaller, hipped roof, arch brick shoulder courses, providing interest and detail. An example of a more cottagey style terrace, semi-detached property. And here in detail is the 2.5-storey property. So this is just an aerial photograph of the site to put it in some context. It's fairly open at present with vegetation to around the outside and some of the mature trees. If I zoom in, because I know that sometimes it's difficult to see on the screen. Here are some of the mature trees within the site which are to be retained. You've got a tree to the side here, which is a TPO oak in the garden of rear property. There's a TPO off site as well in the garden number 4, Newhouse Gardens. And a few photos of the site taken over a few years. So this is a photo looking into the garden of Too Good Place. This is a TPO'd oak tree within that garden. Here we have a photo looking towards Warfield Park and the boundary. You can see the vegetation and the landscaping buffer. A general view of the site with one of those mature trees which will be retained and incorporated into the landscaping. And another one looking back towards the properties in Newhouse Gardens here and the properties in Too Good Place here. So as stated at paragraph 5.1 of the officer's report, a reserved matters application seeks to agree those matters reserved for later approval at the time of the outline application. So before you now is an application for consideration of the following matters: the appearance, landscaping, scale and layout of the proposal. The outline planning permission was approved at appeal in 2018, and that approved the principle of the development and the access. Therefore, these matters are not for determination tonight, and any issues relating to these are also not for determination. As seen on the plans, the layout is derived around the central avenue containing swales and street trees. The rest of the development leads on from this within the site, leads from this with the site surrounded by retained vegetation and a wide landscaping amenity space. The landscaping is considered acceptable and provides biodiversity interest, retains on-street trees and proposes new landscaping to complement the surrounding countryside. Dwellings are considered to be of an acceptable design, incorporating appropriate features to provide interest and variety, using traditional materials of red bricks and tiled roofs. They are considered to be of an appropriate scale, being 2-storey, 4, 2.5-storey properties. Affordable housing is provided centrally within the site, including family-sized dwellings for social rent, which would meet a demonstrated need within the borough. Each dwelling is provided with off-street car parking in accordance with the adopted parking standards, with visitor parking being contained within parking bays across the development. In addition, there is no objection from the heritage consultant. So in conclusion, this reserved matters application is considered to be of an acceptable layout, scale and appearance with appropriate landscaping to soften the built form. Accordingly, the proposal is before committee for approval tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'll rewind 15 minutes and now say this application does comply with our public speaking rules, and as such we have Mr. Hobbs, who's going to speak on behalf of the objectors, and Ms. Wainwright, who's going to be online speaking on behalf of the agent. Just so you understand, let me just check. Ms. Wainwright, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, fine. It just saves me explaining the rules twice. That's all. You will each have 3 minutes in which to speak. That 3 minutes will be uninterrupted, and during that 3 minutes you can say whatever you like as long as it's decent and legal. The only thing you'll hear is at 2 minutes and 40 seconds you'll hear me say 20 seconds. That's just an aide memoir for you to let you know you only have 20 seconds left, and then at 3 minutes we will expect you to stop speaking. That applies to both the agent and, of course, the objector. Do you both understand those rules? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Mr. Hobbs, if you'd like to put your microphone on, which is the big button in the middle. Okay.
Before I start, I should have some slides. Who will be operating
Derek,
those for me?
did you manage to get the slides, or was that part of the...
Yeah, I've got the slides. I'm just pulling them up for you. If you just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Can you see those?
Yeah. Okay, sir. If you'd like to, during your 3 minutes, let Derek know when you want to change your slide.
Okay.
All right. Your 3 minutes start now.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak on this very important issue. We have two main concerns: the vital question of the visibility displays for the access and the proposals regarding the oak tree at the entrance to the site. We also maintain that this reserve matters or REM application is incomplete and must not be approved until all the conditions outlined by the appeal planning inspector have been addressed. Your planning officers state in their report that any questions relating to the access are not part of the reserve matters. We would absolutely dispute this. The appeal planning inspector clearly stated that the visibility displays for the access must be investigated and agreed with the council before any development starts. The viability and safety of the access plans are crucial to any agreement on this development, especially as the access will substantially impact the existing driveways of numbers 5 and 6 Newhurst Gardens. When the applicant submitted plans for a considerably narrower access design with their original REM application, they also submitted a visibility displays report. They clearly recognised the requirement to do so. We believe this narrower access design was submitted because they know they cannot build the access which was approved, as they do not control sufficient land, and as such the resulting visibility displays would not meet highway standards. The applicant was forced to change the access back to the one approved by the inspector. However, they have still not submitted any visibility displays for the approved access. It would be totally unacceptable to approve a REM application for this site, which does not address this question. How can it be necessary to produce this report for the applicant's first REM submission, and then this be totally ignored when they revert back to the original access? If this vital issue is not sorted out now, when will it be? The conditions laid down by the appeal inspector absolutely show that the safety of the access proposals should be part of this application. Next slide, please. Our second objection is focused on the oak tree at the entrance to the site. This tree is not on land owned by the applicant. The applicant wanted to remove this tree thinking it was on their land, but have since included its retention in their plans, saying it is a beneficial landscaping feature, making a considerable contribution to local landscape character, something which is highlighted as a visual amenity within the case officer's report, so it has value. Yet this tree will not survive the construction of the access road or of the highway within the site. Its roots will be damaged and the tree will likely die as a result of the construction work, despite it being shown on the plans to be within a tree protection area. This reality is an omission from the case officer's report. We ask that a decision be deferred to allow the proper consideration of the visibility displays in line with the conditions laid down by the appeal inspector.
20 seconds.
And for a site visit by the committee so they can see the important issues which need to be addressed at the site. The application is being put to the committee when conditions for the appeal report have not been resolved or fully considered. These must be debated in a public and transparent forum before any decision is taken, so the committee members can appreciate how these proposals will directly affect local residents and the environment.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, do members have any questions for the speaker in clarification? Thank you very much. You can retake your seat, sir. I now move over to Ms. Wainwright. Can you hear me, Ms. Wainwright?
I can.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let me just get my... I've lost my clock again. Sorry about this, Ms. Wainwright.
It's okay.
Derek,
Okay.
could you stop sharing the PowerPoint, please?
Yeah, can you stop sharing that now, Derek? Thank you. Okay, Ms. Wainwright, I'm ready if you are. Are you ready?
Ready? Yeah.
Okay, your 3 minutes start now.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Zoe Wainwright and I'm an architectural designer for Crowdace Homes, who are the applicant of this reserve matters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application, which is for the approval of details of appearance, layout, landscaping and scale for 50 new dwellings at Newhurst Gardens, Warfield. Crowdace Homes are a well-established family-run house builder who have a mission to create outstanding new neighbourhoods. They pride themselves on high-quality architectural design and are proud to present the scheme in front of you this evening. As a developer, we've won a wide range of awards for design and quality, including 10 consecutive years of receiving the prestigious Home Builders Federation 5-Star Quality Award. This site benefits from an outline planning approval, which has set the principle of development, and it provides much-needed new homes within the area, including over 25% affordable housing. In response to the objection raised, access is not a reserve matter on this application and will not be considered as part of this committee. We are aware of local concerns relating to the ownership of the access land, and given our desire to work within the community, we will be taking measures to deal with the access, which will be considered by Bracknell Forest Council in due course. This scheme has been worked on through positive collaboration with Bracknell Forest Council, including meetings held with the case officer and highways, urban design and landscape consultees to ensure that the proposed development meets the high standards of local housing. This process ensures that the scheme will integrate well into the area and provide a high-quality neighbourhood in the village of Warfield, and this has resulted in the positive recommendation in front of you this evening. The proposed layout takes advantage of the site setting, in particular the well-established vegetation surrounding the site. Existing trees create focal points for new streets and provide enhancement to the well-considered landscaping proposals that accompany this application. The scheme provides a network of sustainable drainage through planted swales in the central avenue and landscaped attenuation basins. This approach is intended to provide biodiverse enhancements within the site, as well as create sustainable and attractive places for people to live. The proposed layout takes advantage of the rural setting of the site. The concept has been developed in detail where the layouts of buildings, streets and public spaces create a new neighbourhood with a strong sense of place and a clear street hierarchy. It seeks to form two key character areas with a more formal development at the heart of the scheme and rural organic design to the edge. As part of the design process, a thorough architectural appraisal of the local area has been undertaken, ensuring that the proposed dwellings complement the local vernacular. The external appearance of the housing positively responds to its surroundings, picking out key features found in the village, such as dark brick detailing, painted brickwork, and crested ridge tiles. In conclusion, the application before members for determination this evening proposes a high-quality design solution for the site, situated in a sustainable location, with the benefit of an outline
20
permission.
seconds.
The applicant therefore respectfully requests that members accept the officer's recommendation and resolve to grant the reserve matters approval for this development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms Wainwright. Do members have any questions of Ms Wainwright? No, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can switch your camera off now if you so wish. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for officers, please? Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Needless to say, so you know what I might be going to ask. Highway standards, this council has some beautiful trucks that come on a regular basis to collect the waste. Looking at the design, I have concerns with regards to the two and a half story properties that are there, where the placement of bins collection and the access off this Newhurst Gardens. Is it capable with regards to the tree? Have we taken that into consideration? Yeah. Please.
We'll just wait for it to come. Andy, I know that your microphone's coming on. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Andy Wells, Highways Development Management. Sorry, Sarah, to cut across you if you wanted to speak.
No, you can go ahead.
This application before you is for reserve matters of the site layout internal to the site. The matter of access and the tree that is adjacent to the access is related to the outline permission which was granted at appeal, and the applicant has not yet submitted details of the condition discharge for the relevant conditions, which are 6 and 7 on the outline permission, and that outline permission nor those conditions forms part of the application before you this evening.
Yeah,
Should we not be then waiting until we have received such submission? No? Okay.
My mic's on slow, go slow today. Andy Wells, Highways. The condition wording is very clear that on both conditions 6 and 7 of the outline that no development shall take place until vehicle access details and visibility display details have been submitted. So permission for reserve matters could be granted, but they could not start development on site until those matters have been resolved through discharge of conditions.
I would ask then that should they not meet it, then this would not be.
Well, that's a matter of fact.
Okay, well.
Yeah. Councillor Virgo.
Can I come in as well there, Chair? It's Sarah Fryer.
Yeah.
There is a clause within the section 106 that was attached to the outline permission that all roads need to be constructed to adoptable standards, so they will be capable of taking the council's refuse lorries.
Thanks, Sarah.
Councillor Virgo.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Can I go back to the tree issue, Andy, please? I do understand, as you say, that there's still a discharge from the developer. I understand that point. But can we not take more affirmative action, and therefore, as the residents are very concerned about the oak tree, our people should be out there and say this is the minimum requirement we would need on that condition. In other words, because I think they have to put a ring around it, don't they? Because it's an oak tree, and that goes on a lot further from my experience. And that will affect, presumably, the entrance.
If I can come in there, the outline application granted permission for the access into this site, which unfortunately goes through the RPA of that oak tree, so it will have to be carefully constructed. which are details that are reserved by condition that are attached to the outline application, and therefore it's not up for consideration in debate tonight.
Andy, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, could I please? Thank you, Sarah, for that. Can I just add, could the committee, could through you, Mr. Chairman, bring back that condition so that we are absolutely sure on behalf of the residents that both the tree and the entrance are absolutely as per the inspector, but I'm more concerned about the tree, frankly.
No, we can't, because as you may, this council refused the outline application and it was subsequently given on appeal. It's now out of our hands. It's part of the appeal inspector's report.
But could, Mr. Chairman, if the inspector has actually insisted on certain things on his prognosis, and we are the local authority, and that hasn't been, you know, we're not absolutely sure that will be committed.
Then we will enforce, and let's just bring this down to, we are dealing with an application for reserved matters. I understand the excitement around the access and the tree. The fact of the matter is that was dealt with under a previous application that was given permission by an appeal inspector, not by this council. Now, what we have to do is deal with the application that is in front of us. And the application that is in front of us is for appearance, landscaping, scale and layout. The access does not form part of your deliberation and should not form part of your discussion this evening. I'm sorry, but that is the way planning works. I'm sorry, this is not a public meeting. No, I'm sorry. I understand that planning rules are difficult to understand. If the applicant cannot discharge the regulations and the conditions that the appeal inspector laid down, then they cannot build this property. That's it. Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. From what you just said, that appearance is part of the consideration on this. Surely that tree is part of the appearance of the site. And from the slide that was put up, it seems to be absolutely vulnerable.
In this context, it's the appearance of the development itself. As Councillor Dudley, the Chairman, pointed out, the access arrangements were fixed by the outline consent. So we're not looking at that this evening.
Yeah. If I can add
Chair?
to that, paragraph 5.1 of the officer's report gives a definition of appearance. So it's the aspects of a building or place within the development which determine the visual impression of the building or place makes, including the external built form of the development, its architecture, materials, decoration, lighting, colour and texture.
Members, I understand the frustration here, and I understand the frustration from members of the public, but we have rules that we have to follow, and we have to look at this application. We have to look at the appearance, landscaping, scale and layout. This authority already refused the outline application and the access, but an appeal inspector overturned it. The appeal inspector, I don't know why, the appeal inspector has given certain regulations and certain conditions that the applicant must fulfil before any construction takes place. So even if you as members decide to approve this application this evening, that no brick can be laid until the appeal inspector's conditions have been fulfilled. Is that right, Max?
Certainly, that's correct in regards to those conditions that are pre-commencement conditions. Some of them will be conditions that are sort of last beyond the construction stage, but certainly for the pre-construction ones, that is the case.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Ver.
Could I just ask Sarah, Mr. Chairman, obviously we've got regulations on EV, but this was actually approved before those conditions. Am I right? and therefore EVs should be supplied, but we can't enforce it.
Okay, Andy, do you want to take that?
Thank you, Chair. The simple answer is the electric vehicle charging now forms part of building regulations Part S. The building regulations are now in force for any new building regulations applications which come forward from June the 23rd of this year, and therefore this site will be subject to those building regulations Part S in due course when building regulations submissions are made.
Page 53 on your agenda report, condition number 3. Councillor Badibo.
Thank you for that clarification. I was going to ask that question as well. But also, can you just show, there was a diagram of where the social housing were going to be located. Can we see that again, please?
There you go.
Yeah, can I ask why they're all bunched together in the same place?
I don't know why that was a decision that was taken, but our housing officer has looked at it and has not objected to the location of the affordable housing. And actually, I think it's quite positive that it is within the main kind of central element of the scheme instead of being tucked away in one corner, which we sometimes get with affordable housing in larger layouts.
Yeah, sorry, I was hoping that they would have been dotted around instead of being in one place. But is this, by doing this, is that sort of forming a ghetto in the center of the development? I don't know, I'm just asking a question.
Look at page 49 of your agenda.
I mean, I'd hope that it wouldn't in terms of it being, and I think that's one of the advantages it has of being so central, that people would then have a pride in where they're living.
Yeah, it also is, you look at some of the affordable housing and the intermediate housing, they are opposite some quite large private housing. Councillor Birch, I know that your portfolio deals with this. Do you want to...
One of the reasons why it can be useful to have affordable housing together, small together I'm talking about, not vast, is to make it attractive to a residential provider, an RP, an affordable housing association, to take on and support, because they're not spread all over, and it then gives the chances of anything, as previously suggested, developing less chance, because they are supported more closely by the RP.
RP is what we used to call a registered social landlord.
The registered social landlord.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Berg.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I may have missed this in the report, so I apologise. Sarah, lighting. Where are we on the lighting with this? Is it part of the layout?
No, it is proposed to be a dark skies development, I believe, in accordance with the Wallfield Neighbourhood Plan policy, and condition 20 on the outline revokes PD rights for any freestanding external lighting unless agreed with us first. So 1, it's covered by condition, and 2, I don't believe any lighting is going to be proposed anyway.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a short question maybe for our highways officer. We know where the visitor parking is. Is there a provision for disabled parking, can I ask?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Andy Wells, Highways. The parking standards SPD requires spaces to be capable of being made into disabled parking provision if they are in communal areas, which I do not believe there are for residents in this development. The visitor parking that's proposed is all side onto the street, parallel parking spaces, and there is sufficient space around those spaces to be accessible for disabled users should they need to access them.
supplementary, Chairman. Would they then meet our standards in terms of width and length, given what you've identified as being the lay-by parking? Are they to the disabled standard dimensions?
Because they are side-on spaces, our disabled parking standards are set out as an end-in space requirement with adjacent transfer areas. The side-on space requirements are longer in any case for manoeuvring to turn into and out of those spaces as a parallel space. So our standard disabled space length is 4.8 long with a 1.2 metre access zone. So taking the total to 6 metres. Side-on parallel parking space is 6 metres in any case in order to accommodate turning into and out of that space. So the answer is yes in a roundabout way.
Thank you for that. Will the bays be identified? Will there actually be a blue badge sign, or is it effectively, you know, people will use their discretion as to where they can and can't?
The condition 7, which is on the bottom of page 51 and the top of page 52 of the committee report, sets out a requirement that no dwelling shall be occupied until details of signage of and/or road markings for the visitor spaces to be provided, and also directional signage to be provided on the North-South Avenue indicating the location of visitor parking north of plot 7. The layout of the visitor parking was deliberately placed to avoid spaces directly on street on the North-South Avenue, which is tree-lined with the swales that Sarah placed on screen. And so that condition with the additional directional signage was added to ensure that visitors to the development could identify where those visitor parking spaces are from that North-South Avenue.
But that's visitors, that's not actually disabled.
As noted, the requirements in the parking standards SPD for disabled spaces relate to communal parking areas within residential developments. There are no communal residential spaces.
Any other questions, members? Councillor Virgo.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I just need to get this in my head. If the developer comes back and decides to go to a narrow entrance, is it correct that he would then have to submit a 73 alteration to that design?
Andy?
I can answer that. Yes, they would need to submit some formal application to vary the approved outline application, such as a Section 73 application, at which point we could consider it and you could have it, you could call it to committee as per any other application.
Thank you. Great.
Any other questions? No one online? No. Okay. So it falls to me to move the recommendation in the officer's report, which is on page 50
and supplementary pages 2
and
3.
it is affected by supplementary on pages 2 and 3. Now members and members of the public, I understand this is difficult to swallow, and it's difficult for this authority to swallow in some respects because we turned the outline application down. However, an inspector has approved this application and has made quite specific requirements of the developer with regards to access and the protection of the tree. If the developer cannot perform those conditions, then they cannot implement any planning permission that is given this evening, because a lot of those conditions are pre-commencement conditions. Therefore, this evening you are looking at the appearance, the landscaping, the scale and the layout of the application only. That is only what you are approving here this evening. You are not approving the access and you are not approving the tree protection, because that does not form part of this application. It is so many times you have outline applications and then you have reserved matters. There are further reserved matters to come before us with regards to lighting. But this evening, this is what you're looking at. Is there a seconder for this, please?
Yep.
Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. this has been a very long and detailed discussion, and obviously there are concerns we can understand. I would actually, Councillor Virgo has made a good point that if, in fact, if there is a revised scheme with regard to the access, then I do feel that it would be beneficial for the committee to consider it. So that would be the only recommendation I would make. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Virgo.
I think it's all been said, Mr. Chairman. One thing I didn't ask, I wish I had have done, was whether the oak tree had a TPO on it. And
Any
if
other
it,
member wish to, no, we've gone past questions.
let me just finish. Let me just finish. 'Cause I was breathing. It takes me a long time. And if it hasn't got a TPO, I would like this committee to ask for a TPO on that tree, please.
Okay, that request is noted. Thank you. Councillor Badiway.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to see a developer delivering on the 25% affordable housing without any excuse of not commercially viable. So it's always a good thing. I'm looking forward to seeing the electric charging infrastructure in place. I think this will probably be the first development of this scale that we're going to see this. I personally don't buy the grouping of the social housing, that it makes life easier for the landlord. I don't buy that. But I will be supporting this application because of the affordable housing especially. We really need that in Bracknell Forest. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. We talked about the tree and the access. If that's absolutely conditional, I can't see how we can refuse it.
It's not a subject of this application.
It wasn't a question.
You're right, it wasn't. I'm sorry. Any other member wish to speak? In that case, all those in favour to approve, please show. And those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we move on then to agenda item 7. If any members of the public want to leave, you're more than welcome to do so, or stay and watch the rest of the fun. Next item is Crownwood Primary School, Open Way, Bracknell, which is change of use from amenity land to educational use, including the erection of a 2-metre high boundary fence. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. Thank you. Can I check it can be seen?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
The application is reported to the Planning Committee as there has been 21 objections.
Hold on a minute, Katie. It just took a little while for it to come up. I can see it on my screen, but it took a little while to come up on the big screen. So, okay, carry on now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll start again. This application is reported to the Planning Committee as there has been 21 objections on the application originally submitted and a further 7 objections following the receipt of amended plans. Members are firstly directed to the yellow sheet for updates on the application. The application relates to Crownwood Primary School for a change of use from amenity land to educational use, including the erection of 2-metre high boundary fences. The site's located within the urban area and relates to an existing area of woodland, which is shown pink here, and is partly designated as active open space of public value. The existing school is located in this location here, and the existing car park for the school. The existing forest school is located here, around the existing car park. Then you have the properties in Queen's Pine located to the north, in this location here. And then you have a Plardon Way running to the front of the site. The plans on the screen show the proposed fence to front of Plardon Way, which is mesh in style and to be coloured green. And then the plans have been amended to now show a close bordered fence to the northern boundary with the properties in Queen's Pine. The plan on the screen shows the area lined where the extension to the forest school is proposed, with the existing forest school in this location here, wrapping around the car park. The green line on the plan shows the location of the proposed wild mesh fence, which has now been set back 7 metres further from the road and footpath, and a total length of 9 metres from the Plardon Way Road. The plan also shows the proposed animal access points where the arrows are indicating. And the purple line on the plan shows the position of the close bordered fence to the properties in Queen's Pine. The photograph on the screen shows a view of the site looking northwards along a Plardon Way. A view looking southwards along a Plardon Way. And then a front view of the woodland with the properties in Queen's Pine in that location. A view of the existing woodland. And then we move on to photos which show the current forest school and how it's used. So an area of informal seating. A further view of the existing forest school. Further view. And a view from the existing forest school looking out to the properties that in Queen's Pine, which currently board the forest school. And then a picture of the fires how the fire is currently used within the forest school, it's shown within a contained metal pit. And then a further view of the existing forest school and how the boundary treatment has been previously installed. Then a further view of the forest school. The site is located within the settlement and part of the site is designated as active open space on the Bracknell Forest Borough local plan, and part of the site is identified as open space of public value under the Bracknell neighbourhood plan in connection with the existing school. The proposal therefore will not result in the loss of open space to be used in connection with the school. The proposal does not propose the loss of trees, and whilst some undergrowth will need to be removed, trees are proposed to be protected with a method statement for protecting the trees during the erection of the fences. The plans have also shown that some trees around 75 millimetres in diameter may be required to be removed, and some crown lifting. However, a condition has now been proposed on the supplementary report to require that details of any trees that do need to be removed for the fencing is submitted for approval. The application has been amended to set the mesh fence back from a Plardon Way to reduce its visual impact and for the protection of wildlife. The fence fronting a Plardon Way is to have holes underneath for wildlife access. The impact on residential amenity has been carefully considered, and whilst it's acknowledged there be some noise associated with the use is currently occurring adjacent to the existing properties in Queen's Pine. The proposed provides an extension to an existing school site, and the proposal is not considered to result in a significant adverse impact on local residents of the site. The application has considered protected species on the site, and conditions have been proposed to mitigate the impacts. Surface water flooding has been considered by the lead local flood authority, who have raised no objections. In light of the above, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the detailed recommendations set out on page 63 to 64 of the report on the yellow sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, so this application once again complies with our public speaking regulations. So therefore, I understand we have Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, sir, you've seen all this work before. Take your seat and make yourself comfortable. Can you just press the button on that microphone? Yeah, it works. Okay, if you just press it off for a moment. That's okay. Okay, Mr. Bennett, as per before, you will have 3 minutes in which to speak uninterrupted. The only time you'll hear a voice is when I say you've got 20 seconds left. After that, I'll ask members if they've got any clarification for you. With that said, are you ready, Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes start now.
I am speaking to the committee on behalf of 60 residents in the Queen's Pine and surrounding streets. The members of Queen's Pine Action Group are very disappointed there has been no attempt to talk to the residents regarding the initial application or the amended application, despite acknowledge of our concerns. We've asked for a meeting and have been ignored. The school has been located in its current boundaries for 40 years, and the woodland was left for a natural haven and break from the road and properties. We feel the change of use is unneighbourly and it will impact our lives. There are several relevant planning concerns from the residents which will impact their well-being, which we have communicated to the council. Increased risk of fires spreading to the residents' properties, fumes affecting our daily lives, uncontrollable amounts of smoke entering homes, privacy in gardens impacted, increased noise from the forest school, unrestricted hours of use, safeguarding the children using the forest school and safeguarding the residents, inadequate wildlife assessment carried out, 2-metre fence out of character of the surrounding area. The risk of fires spreading above ground and under within the roots has given the residents grave concern for danger to their properties, our lives, wildlife and the surrounding community. We do not want a repeat of the Swinley forest fires in 2011. We are also deeply concerned with the ecological impact on the woods that provide a vital habitat to the wildlife within Crown Wood. A 5-year survey only after approval is granted is unacceptable, as the animals would have already been pushed out of their habitats. The residents, including our children, benefit from the biodiversity of the untouched woodland. Loss of this wildlife that visits our gardens from the woodland makes us extremely sad. The damage that will happen to the woodland with the installation of new fences, tree removal and crowning to add clearance for the fences will cause insignificant damage to the ecosystem. Although not a material planning concern, we think it is important that the committee understand that both the initial and amended application regarding the boundary fence adjacent to the woodland from number 1 to 12 overlooks that it is owned by the residents without any consultating or any party wall agreements discussed. Under the Human Rights Act, we are entitled to a peaceful enjoyment of our property, including our outside spaces. We feel if this application is approved, this will deprive us of this and have an impact on our mental health. We, the Queen's Pine Action Group, request the Planning Committee refuse this application and support the community.
Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Yes, Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Yes, it's clarification.
Oh, sorry.
Ah, now it has. Thank you. It's clarification, sir. I've gone through the paper, I've looked through it and listening to what's been said, but nowhere can I find who is the owner of this land. Is it the school?
That's probably an officer question rather than a question to the speaker.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought we'd gone into
All
that
right,
part.
yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, any questions for the speaker? Councillor Ballyboy.
Thank you. In the picture that was shown in the presentation, there was a fire pit already that is already currently used. Have you ever experienced or any resident experienced the smoke coming into their garden?
Yes, regularly, even today.
When you answer, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Turn your
Yes, today, the forest school's used today. It was regularly used. We often have to shut our windows. We just can't use our gardens when there's smoke.
Any other questions? Okay. Councillor Hayden.
It's just a quick one. Can you just confirm, did you say that there's been no liaison from the school at all?
Yes, that is correct. We obviously, I think we put 21 objections on there, and I think we asked twice on the comments, myself and the other residents, and we have not been once come to at all. Even when the forest school was, so I've actually lived in Queen's Pine for over 20 years, and the forest school, when it was originally put in, we were never even consulted then. So no.
Thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you very much indeed, sir. You can retake your seat. I understand that the applicant was invited to send a speaker, but we don't have one. So therefore, I'll move directly to officers' questions. Sorry, members' questions. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Members' questions to officers. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, I'll continue to where I was. It was just for clarification then, who would be responsible? Because at the end of the day, if they haven't had any input, as has been told to us, when there's damage, is it owned by the borough and we're responsible, or is it the school leasing it or whatever? There isn't anything in the papers stating who is responsible for that land.
The applicant is Crownwood Primary School. I believe Bracknell Forest Council obviously own the land as the council managing schools, but the school are responsible for the application and managing the land.
So for clarification, Katie, Bracknell Forest Council, the people of Bracknell Forest own the land, and the school want to use it without having ownership of it. Is that right?
The school obviously not rent's probably not the right word. I lease the land from the council.
Okay. No, actually, it's not a planning matter, unfortunately, but it's interesting. Okay, any other questions, members? Councillor Virgo.
Mr. Chairman, I find it very perplexing, to be honest. I see on the report, this is really to Katie, I suppose, the biodiversity officer says no objection. I find it really strange. If you put loads of children on a field, well, it's coming. You put loads of children on a field playing, surely that's going to chase all the biodiversity, isn't it? Am I a complete idiot here or what?
That's two questions there.
So I think the premise of a forest school is that the children are using it with the woodland still there, so they want to use the woodland to encourage their studies as such. A full detailed biodiversity report has been looked at in terms of the badgers, it's considered badgers, dormouse, hedgehogs, etc., who would use the site, and because they're not actually proposing to remove the forest as such, then their habitat's not being proposed to be removed. There's quite a detailed condition that's been proposed that the applicants would need to come back with a woodland and biodiversity management plan, and this is proposed to secure detailed descriptions and maps of the woodland and where the habitats are on the site, and how those areas are going to be managed, and to make sure that there isn't any deterioration in the ecology of the site. So the proposals aren't actually looking to remove any ecology on the site, and they're proposing to enhance it.
Okay, you got another question? Okay.
Couple, actually. Just following on that, Katie, it's all very well putting a condition on this, but who on earth is going to make sure that happens? Because, you know, who's going to control that? I can't see that. That's a question. That's the first question. And the second question, I'll put them both together. The gentleman, I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name, so I apologise. Thank you. Suggested there were regular fires there. Are you aware that there's regular fires there? And if there are, where are the fires coming from?
In terms of the biodiversity and woodland management plan, it's a condition and they're required to submit that back to the council, which will then need to be considered by our ecologist. And then if that's approved, then it's a condition that needs to be met. And if they don't adhere to that condition, then potentially you can enforce against it. In terms of the fires, the school had advised that these are carefully managed in line with a risk assessment that they've submitted, and I think that's been included in the supplementary report. This document sets out that when the fires are used, they're very localised and within the existing fire pits. I think that there's also a photo contained on the supplementary report, and it goes through and sets out how it's managed. And they've actually said the school, in terms of the fires, position the fire away from all buildings and are considerate to neighbours. They also consider the wind direction and say that this is constantly assessed when they're having fires on the site, and that they carefully manage any smoke, etc. Which the risk assessment is quite a detailed document. So the school have also advised that they've never had any issues notified to them regarding the fire since the forest school has been running, and also there's been no incidents that they've had to report to health and safety from the fires, so they're very carefully managed.
Okay, I'll come to you in a moment. I've got Councillor Hayden, Baddy Bow and Mackenzie Boyle, and then Councillor Green. Councillor Hayden.
The report mentions the forest school. What exactly is a forest school? Is that a formal thing or is it a casual thing? I mean, does it give any extra rights in terms of trying to acquire some public property?
I can advise what a forest school is. I can't, I'm afraid, advise in terms of whether it gives them extra rights requiring public property. But on the school's website, the forest school organisation describes a forest school as an inspirational process that offers all learners regular opportunities to achieve and develop confidence and self-esteem through hands-on learning experiences in a woodland or natural environment with trees. And the committee report has set out what the students actually do during their lessons at the forest school. It says they're taught safety rules and skills for using equipment and doing activities such as tree climbing and making a fire. The children learn about and respect for the natural world and get the chance to do activities such as whittling greenwood, cooking over fire, den building, mud kitchen, natural arts and crafts, planting, gardening, bug hunting and role play. I'm afraid I can't advise whether the forest school though has any more rights over the land from the council. That may be a question for legal.
Councillor Baddybow.
Thank you. Can you just confirm there's already a forest school operating on the site? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
One thing I didn't see in it's what exactly is going to happen to that forest school. Are they trying to expand it, or I didn't see that on the.
Yes.
They're
Yes,
trying
it's
to
an
expand
extension.
it. Okay. When you talk about expansion, is that the number of students using the facility, the forest school, now increases at any one time?
I would presume so, if it's a larger area.
So my question to that is, in terms of noise, on your supplementary report, there was mention of slight noise increase. I'm trying to understand what the definition of slight is.
I think the issue is that you currently have the forest school adjacent to properties in Queen's Pine, and you have the existing school already there. So the properties that are basically to the north of the new extension to the Forest School would already be experiencing some noise from the existing school and the existing Forest School. So in terms of having the new Forest School extension, I don't think the noise would be significant when you're considering the existing noise that is already occurring at the site.
Okay, so but with the noise, I'm assuming the noise are largely going to be during break time, for example. And I'm assuming also that the Forest School will not be during break time, they'll just be during class times. Am I right? Is that a fair assumption?
I would think so, yeah. I think the Forest School is run by a teacher, so I would assume it's not to be used during break times.
Okay. Now, let's see here. With the risk assessment that you mentioned previously, is the neighbors, the smoke going into the neighbor's garden considered as part of the risk assessment, or the risk assessment is just purely on health and safety of students and the school and the teachers?
In the risk assessment, it's considered smoke, and it said it covers existing measures, new measures, and it's saying about positioning the fire away from buildings and considerate to neighbours. So they've obviously taken that into account in the risk assessment and the wind direction.
Okay. Do we have that though? I mean, is that definitely in the risk assessment that was shared?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay, thank you. We talked about, the report talked about, where is this? Use during school hours and for some extra school activities. Now, there are two things here, school hours and extra school activities, which could be outside school hours. I noticed in the supplementary report that the use has now been curtailed to 5 p.m., but it doesn't say day of the week or start time.
So your question is what days?
Yeah, what days and what is the start time?
The condition 9 on the supplementary report basically says that the Forest School shouldn't be used outside the hours of 8:30 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon. And it also proposed to restrict the use, not have the Forest School used during weekends or on public or bank holidays.
Okay, thank you. I must have missed that. Apologies for that. Okay. And lastly, I just want to, the policy, there's a policy here that says this space was identified as open space of public value. At what point did we decide this is no longer of public value? Sorry, yes. Well, I don't know how to phrase the question. Did the applicant decide that this was no longer a space of public value?
No, the part of the woodland is already designated as open space of public value under the council's planning policies, and also within the Bracknell neighbourhood plan. So it's already designated as open space. The school.
But what I'm saying is you're not going to enclose it. I mean, this application is about enclosing it and making only use by the school, not the public any longer. Am I right?
That's right, but the part of the woodland is already designated as open space of public value within the Bracknell local plan, within the neighbourhood plan, and within the council's policy map as well. So it's already designated as that. It's not changing its designation. I have a plan showing that if you would like to see it.
So clarification here. The designation doesn't change. Open space of public value. It's just being fenced in and being only used for a certain amount of the people, not for everybody else, not the public. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And just if I could just clarify, Chairman, if that's okay. Max Baker, Assistant Director Planning. Open space of public value isn't necessarily publicly accessible. It can still have public value through being open space and undeveloped without necessarily being accessible to the public. So in this case, it would still have a beneficial impact on the character of Oplarden Way, for example, without the access being available to the public.
Yes, thank you for that. That's very helpful. Yeah, and then just lastly, can we show some of the pictures of the existing Forest School, please, where the fire pits and everything else, the tents and all that?
There should be, sorry.
Yeah, it's
let's
coming.
scroll down.
So, in your report, there was talk about everything that is going to change within this new area will be temporary. Would you consider the fire pit and everything we see there? I mean, I see them as permanent structures. They're not, because to me, temporary would mean movable or something that is not fixed. But these are all fixed things.
They're temporary in terms of, I think they can be moved easily. I'll just find the picture of the fireplace, but you can see here they're just logs that are used for seating. They're not fixed structures into the ground. I think they can all be removed quite easily. They're not permanent structures that have been shown. Let me just get the fire pit picture. So the fire pit is just really shown with some logs going round a metal container as such. So I wouldn't say that was a permanent structure. It's quite easily removed. And also with regards to the parachute that's been shown above, they're not structures.
Yeah, okay. I'm just, why I asked that question is a house could also be moved or demolished or something.
Okay, right. Yeah. We'll let other members have some questions now, I think. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. Max, designation for public use.
Can you put your microphone on your mouth? We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, because I've been sneezing like mad. Sorry. Designation for public use says Max, but that's fine. So thinking of that, therefore, with reference to the risk assessment, is there a risk documented that the school could let this area out to other organisations outside of the hours specified that the officer had said?
The condition proposed on the supplementary report advises that the forest school can only be used for those hours. So if they were to let the forest school out to another organisation, then they'd be in breach of that condition.
It could be, even though it's designated for public use.
But the public open space is attached to the school though, and also includes the existing school playing field. So I believe they would be in breach of that condition still if they were to let it out separately.
Okay. It's all a bit tricky though, isn't it? Can be a bit tricky, but thanks for a clarification there, Sam. Thank you.
Councillor Virgo.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to clarify something. It's the fires that worry me a bit, because our speakers said that there were regular fires that they couldn't go out into their gardens, and so the question really is: there seems to be a difference of opinion, really, about the effect of the fires. Katie, I wonder if you can help on that one.
The school have advised that they haven't received any complaints in relation to fires, and I believe that's also the case with environmental health. There's been no complaints received regarding fires causing nuisance to the properties in Queen's Pine.
Okay, Councillor Green.
Michael's basically answered most of my questions. But I just wanted to confirm, where they have the forest school now, is it actually in the school complex, or is part of that already in those woods?
No, I understand it's within the schools.
within the school. So they're not actually using any of that land at the moment to do with the school. So they would have to have an agreement with the council. It's not that they've got one. They would have to have an agreement with the council to lease it.
It's not a planning issue.
No, okay.
No. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Katie. Just one question, really, and again, it goes back to the fire pit. I can't see any fire extinguishers or any blankets, fire retardant blankets. Is there any recommendation that there should be, given, of course, the risk that with strong winds and an ember coming off the fire pit and the proximity of the trees, is that something that had been discussed with the applicant or the agent?
It's in the risk assessment. Well, actually, it's not.
The school has advised that they have a means to extinguish fire close by at all times, so either water, sand or an extinguisher. So they always have that close by. I don't know why it's not shown in the picture, but that may be because the fire wasn't active when that photo was taken. Obviously, they'd need the water, sand or the extinguisher when the fire's actually going, but they obviously may not have had it when I took the photograph.
Okay, I've got some questions now, Katie. Katie, can you put the plan up, please, that shows the application area and the area that the current forest school is being utilised?
I know it seems to have gone small.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's it. I think that's it.
Apologies.
Yeah, it's all right. Don't worry. I know we've had enough with technology this evening. So.
Sorry.
It's all right. Take your time. There's no panic. I'm here all night.
Oh, it's gone there. Right, okay.
You're nearly there.
Nearly there.
Actually, I think if you hold that, I think that shows you should. Well done. Right. Okay. That shows that small triangle, or whatever. It's not a triangle because it's four-sided, but the small triangle at the top is the current forest school.
Yeah, it wraps around here.
Yeah. Okay. And the larger area to the right is the proposed forest school, which is in addition to the existing forest school. Correct?
Yes.
So it is more than proposed to be more than doubling in size. Is that correct?
No one. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. With regards to the days of use, I notice on the supplementary report the hours of use have been restricted, and the days of use are being restricted to Monday to Friday and not the weekends or bank holidays. Is there a restriction for no use when school holidays, when the school isn't being used?
That hasn't been included in the condition because it says obviously shall only be used during school holiday club hours or for after school clubs.
So school holiday club is when?
That could be during any of the holidays. So it could be during the summer holidays, Easter holidays, potentially the Christmas holidays.
Except they can't use it during the bank holidays and weekends.
Yes, that's what the condition recommends.
Okay. Do we know and I can't see it on the supplementary report, what is being burnt on these fires?
Let me have a look in the risk assessment to see if it says.
Just to come in on the risk assessment, it says they would use dried timber to minimise the generation of smoke.
Dried timber, okay. On the biodiversity question, and I'm sorry, Katie, I'm going to ask you to put a picture up again. Could you put a picture up of the pictures of the forest school, please? The photographs.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going. Next one. Right. Okay. That's great. Thank you. That one will do fine. Oh, gone too far. All right. Well, this can illustrate part of my point. Biodiversity and destruction of biodiversity, of course, is not only trees, but a lot of it is to do with the undergrowth where things live as well. And I think that this illustrates my question. Outside of this fence at the moment that is not being used as a forest school, you will see that there is quite a lot of growth and bracken and other growth. And where the current forest school is, it is threadbare. Has the biodiversity officer taken that into consideration?
They have taken that into consideration, and condition 6 on the original committee report requires a detailed management plan to be submitted. So they want the new, because obviously I think when this forest school was originally put in place, it didn't require a change of use because it was all within the existing school boundary. So now that obviously they've had to submit a planning application for the extension to the forest school, further consideration can be given to the biodiversity. So they basically are saying that we need an ecological mitigation plan to be submitted, which shows detailed descriptions and maps of habitats on the site and areas where these need to be maintained and kept. So whilst there will be some areas that may be like this, there'll be other areas where careful consideration needs to be considered in terms of maintaining the habitats. So that is the requirement, why there is the requirement for that condition.
Okay. On the risk assessment, I note on the risk assessment that it says there will be plenty of water available. What do they believe is plenty of water? And as you probably know, I've got some history of dealing on the fire authority, and plenty of water for a fire, it can mean one thing to one person, another thing to another. What have they said? What they believe plenty of water is?
They haven't defined that in. Obviously, they haven't defined that in the risk assessment, and it just says a good supply of water or sand. But the person that runs the forest school, I believe, has specific qualifications in dealing with fires, etc. And they obviously have to carry out the risk assessment. So they'll be appropriately trained in terms of how much water they need to have available.
I'll be interested to know what those qualifications are. Okay, Katie, would you agree that if this is a larger area being used for the forest school, there will be more fires and therefore more smoke?
They haven't actually clarified exactly how many fires they will be using on the forest school, so it may be that they just have. I wouldn't consider that they'd probably have many fires going at the same time, because that would mean they need more members of staff to actually appropriately manage the risk of the fires. They haven't specific.
Why do they need more space?
I guess they need want a larger area, but they haven't specifically said that it would actually generate more fires.
Okay. And going to noise, once again, the same argument I think applies. If there is a larger area affecting more of the back gardens, specifically numbers 1 to 12, there is a certain amount of noise being generated from this forest school. We heard that from the public speaker. Would you agree that there will be even more noise if there are larger areas being used?
The school haven't specifically confirmed whether there'd be more. Obviously, more than 1 year group at a time using the Forest School. But in terms of the actual overall school, it's not this application would not generate more children going to the school. It's hard to determine whether they'd actually have more children at one time in the overall forest area, or whether they just needed it as an extension to the existing forest school.
All right, last question from me is that should this forest school be approved, would it only be available to the pupils of Crownwood School?
That's what the proposed condition on the supplementary report is saying. Or I'm not sure whether holiday clubs in the summer may have pupils from other schools that go to the holiday clubs, but it obviously would be still restricted to the time limits, and it's not.
That's not my question. My question was, will it be restricted to only the pupils of Crownwood School? Now, you contradicted yourself in your answer. Either it is or it isn't. If it is, then it is only Crownwood School pupils. If it isn't, and it's holiday club pupils that are outside of the Crownwood pupils, what numbers are we talking about?
I'm afraid I don't know in terms of the holiday clubs. They haven't given that detail.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other questions, members? Okay, if there's no other questions, it falls to me to propose the officer's recommendation.
63.
It's on page 63.
Supplementary 4 to 10.
And on the supplementary report 4 to 10. Members, there's been a lot of questions on this from me and from you. I think there are quite a few unanswered questions on this as well. However, I believe that we have enough information for you to be able to deliberate on this application this evening. Forest School is not something we often come across, and it can be useful for children's education in the right locations. But I will give you my feelings later on in the debate. Do I have a seconder for this, please? Councillor Birch, thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak?
I'll reserve, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Baddy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm struggling with this. I think the school already has, and they do the forest school already. So this is just an extension of the forest school. I'm also surprised that the numbers of students or the number of classes that could go on at the same time with this expansion was not included in the report, because that would have given us an idea of how many fires will be lit at the same time or could be lit at the same time, how many fire pits were actually going to be there, also the noise level, because I think if the current forest school could take maybe 20 students at any one time, and you add that to 60, for example, that's a lot of noise. I also think this is public space. We're fenced in, and so nobody will be able to use or go into that space anymore. But also, I'm concerned because the level of objection is really something I think we need to consider here, because there's a lot of residents and this space was actually left for a reason when the school or the houses were being built, and I think we need to respect that.
Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it really troubles me that the school have not made any effort to, you'll probably say that's not a planning matter, but they've not made any effort to consult with the local residents. But it's really, on the officer's report, it's on section 1.2, the second sentence. It's not considered the development would result in the loss of open space or have an adverse impact on the character of the area. I just find that is completely misleading, because if you're going to build a 6-foot fence around somewhere, you're losing open space and you're having an adverse impact. So right from the start of reading the report, I found I was struggling to understand the justification for the application.
Vice Chair.
With that, Chairman. Following on from the observations made by Councillor Hayden, what we've got here is actually 26 objections which are contained in the agenda, and subsequently a number of emails that we've all received in the last few days. There's clearly a great deal of concern, and I believe what we've actually got now is what potentially becomes an enclave, where it's actually enclosed and the public, or the residents, should we say, are denied the opportunity to see the vegetation. I think in one word it's summed up as unneighbourly, and I will not be supporting the recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
I don't want to repeat what other people have said, only is to say is I'm not convinced by this, Mr. Chairman, because I think the biodiversity, you asked a question, I asked a question. I'm just not convinced by this. I think if you get loads of people on a site and then said the biodiversity will be maintained by a condition, I'm not convinced it will be. So I can't support it. I'm very sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Ball, did you wish to speak?
Just to say that I cannot support this application, and I concur with Councillor Brossard.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Yes, sir. I can see where the school wish to encourage young persons in biodiversity and that, but the way the paper has been presented, and then to hear towards the end that there would be summer schools or other such things, the papers in my here are very confusing in itself, and I do think it's inappropriate the way it's been presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Second, did you wish to speak? You're reserved.
No one else is.
I think everybody else. Does anybody else want to speak? I'll be summing up after you.
Yeah,
But
indeed. There were comments about unneighbourliness, etc. There is an existing facility there, and it has been run very effectively. How can I know that? Because the evidence I've been presented with says that there have been no complaints about the level of impact, etc. Up until now, when the request is to expand the use of what I believe is an excellent idea and an excellent learning opportunity for young people. Now, if you look, and I'm looking at, you can look at the plan, I'm looking on Google Earth, at the fact that if you then give that more space, and I want you to think about this, because it would allow, if you were going to move the fires away from the proximity of the current residents and more down towards the centre of the site, that would reduce the impact. And by giving that permission to have a bigger site, you reduce other forms of impact, such as the further you are away, the lower the noise level, etc. So in considering this, by having a bigger area in which to function, you are actually mitigating the problems that you've all been talking about, and that, in my view, is a material consideration. It's not unneighbourly, because it's going to give the users the opportunity to consider moving further away from those neighbours. The times have been limited, etc. And I have to say, there has been no evidence presented as to summer schools, etc., and information like that. So I cannot judge. The only thing that evidence that we have been presented with members is that this is a facility that will be used during school hours, etc. And those hours have been presented and limited in that to that extent. So I'm looking at what would be the total detrimental impact. If we turn round and say, oh, the impact on biodiversity is such. Well, I've seen, because my school in Sandhurst goes to Edgebarrow, and they have a very contained area where the children go and sit, and they do not destroy and do not impede the biodiversity of that area. We've seen in a report that there was mention of badgers. Well, at a survey said there haven't been any evidence of badgers for some time, but they're still going to go and have a look. And I would contend also that if you, and we've seen this in other parts of the borough, if you put up a green-coated fence, the visual impact on the area is hugely minimised. So I'm troubled that we are looking at this from the point of view of bad, when all the evidence I can see gives the applicant the opportunity to mitigate and to add extra value to the mitigate the damage and the comments about well-being, but also to enhance the educational experience and the life of our young people. And I find it interesting because the trick is in the name, I think. Bracknell Forest. And here's a forest school educating our young people in what our most common asset is, and that is the forest. So I believe this is an excellent opportunity. I cannot see where any material infringement of policy is being brought about. I see it as an excellent opportunity for our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Okay, it leaves me to sum up, and I've got my own views on this as well, which I'll try and outline. I do take into consideration Councillor Birch's excellent comments about more space, and therefore it'll be spread out more, and therefore it will be mitigated. I would agree with that, except we don't have any restriction on numbers. If we had restriction on numbers, I would say yes, more space means that it's spread out more. But what we don't know here is whether or not the numbers are going to double, triple or quadruple. We don't know that. Therefore, I can't agree with that argument. It's all very well that there is a current use there at the moment, but this use is now being moved to another part of Queen's Pine, and people would have to live with that, which they haven't had to live with at the moment. Open space is at a premium, and we know that we try to protect open space with our Greenbelt policies. This is not Greenbelt, but we do try and protect open space as much as we can. I don't believe in enclosing open space is a good protection, especially when you see the erosion that has happened on that forest school area that's being used at the moment. You know, all of the undergrowth, all of the bracken, and all of the lower hanging fruit, so to speak, has all been destroyed. It's all gone. It could come back at some time, but I do have some sympathy with the residents here, insofar that I believe this is a step too far. It's double or trebling the space that is being used, and I think that it is unneighbourly. I think that it will cause a noise problem. I did try and have an acoustic barrier included in this application, but was told that it would be too expensive. Well, I'm sorry, but expense is not a planning issue. Therefore, I don't believe I will be supporting this application, but I will then put it to your vote and you will have the decision, members. All those in favour to approve, please show. And those against. And the motion falls. We now need an alternative motion. Max, can I work with you on this one tomorrow and put an alternative motion?
Chair, you'll have to work with the team leader and case officer, as I am not around until after Christmas, after tonight.
Okay, all right. Members, are you happy that I work with the case officer and team leader for an alternative motion that's policy-led on this one? And I will bring it back for your confirmation at the next meeting so that you have a vote on it. Okay? Indy, can you help me?
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to check what procedure you're seeking to follow there. So you will have to bring it back to next committee then. You probably won't have to present the whole item again, but you will have to set out what happened at this meeting and then move your motion.
Yeah, that's what I said, that I will bring it back to the next committee meeting for the alternative motion to be voted on.
I think you won't just be able to go straight to a vote. You will have to,
We will be presenting an alternative motion.
Sorry, sorry, Chairman, are we just deferring this then to the next meeting?
No, we're not. What we're doing is we have refused this application.
So we must have valid reasons.
Alternative motion would be brought to the next meeting for you to vote on.
I didn't believe that was our procedure.
Is that okay, Indy?
I might need Derek's help on this, but I think we've done this at a previous committee, haven't we, where we didn't have a blue sheet, but I'm just going to quickly check the procedure.
Yeah, in planning terms, I don't think we can have refused the application without a reason for refusal. But procedurally, yes, I think the question is whether we can just bring the alternative motion to the next meeting and effectively leave it in abeyance until then.
Yeah, I think that's what happened at the last one, didn't it, Max?
Yeah, it did, about 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, can you bear with me just 1 second? I just want to check this.
Councillor Birch, you probably remember when you had the 2-stage process.
Yeah, I think I'm just following the rules of debate on the annex to the committee procedure rules. Because there's no alternative motion and the debate's concluded, you are going to have to basically put it in abeyance, and then it comes back to the next committee where you will set out the item again. Probably won't require as much detail, then set out what your alternative motion is.
Thank you for that, Indy.
Okay.
Right, we move on then to agenda item 8. Okay, so just for clarification then, the application has been refused. What we need to do is we need to set out planning reasons for its refusal. All right, so an alternative motion has to be put forward to this committee. The alternative motion will be that the application is refused because on these grounds.
Is that something you guys do, or do the residents have to?
No, we will do that.
You can watch it online.
And you can come along to the next meeting and see that in action, or you can watch it online. And in fact, on the agenda at the next meeting, the alternative motion will be on that agenda. But effectively, this application by this committee has been refused.
It's been 4 weeks today.
Okay. Yeah, okay, good idea. All right, I'm sure the residents will want to leave. It's now, according to my watch, 8:45. Can I suggest that we come back here at 8:55? agenda item 8, I believe.
Yes, it is. And then
Which is Windmill Farm, Malt Hill, Warfield. Which is Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. If you can let me know when you can see it.
Yep, we can see that. Thank you.
Brilliant. I will crack on. So this next application relates to a proposal at Windmill Farm, Malt Hill, Warfield. The application is before committee due to the number of objections from the public and was subject to a member site visit on Saturday. I would now like you to draw your attention to the supplementary report. Amended plans have been received and the proposal has been amended to include one visitor parking space with plot 1 accommodating 3 spaces on their forecourt, which still maintain pedestrian access to the front door. As a result, condition 2 has been updated to reflect the new plans. So this application proposes the demolition of the existing agricultural barns and the replacement with 6 dwellings. So this is the site here. You've got one agricultural barn here. Let me zoom in. One agricultural barn here, one here. You've got Malt Hill here to the west, and the windmill Sang is to the south with a public footpath running along the boundary like so. So here is the proposal for a new access road. This is the existing access road, which would be removed and converted back to grass pastures. You have a proposal for 5 dwellings here with a terrace of 3, bookended by 2 detached properties with parking to the front. If I zoom in, that's not the most up-to-date plans, my apologies. I have put the parking plan on here. And then you've got another single-storey dwelling here. Right, let's go over to that parking plan. There we go. So this is the amended plan with the visitor parking space on it, with 3 parking spaces now proposed for house 1. This is a bit more in detail of the site, so it's maintaining the hedgerow between the 2 properties or the 2 barns. The yellow lines you might just be able to see indicate existing dwellings, so existing buildings on the site. Sorry, it's late. I'm mangling up my words. And the proposed garden areas are clearly located on the plans. These gardens are on areas of existing hard sanding. So here's a section showing the end elevations, if you like, of the proposal. So this is the single-storey plot 6. And again, the orange lines give an indication of the existing built form upon the site, so you can see that it's very similar. This is the elevation of 5 dwellings. So here you can see the 2 detached properties with the terrace of 3 in between. And here are the elevations of the proposed single-storey property. Again, here are some sections just showing the profiles for comparison's sake of the proposed and existing buildings. It is a Greenbelt application. We'll go on later in the presentation to the consideration of that. This table outlines what the differences are in terms of volume, footprint, hard standing and heights between the buildings that are existing and the proposal. Move on to the photographs. Here's the entrance of Malt Hill. This is into the site, so the new access would continue straight on, whereas the existing access bends around to the right. The existing access going down to the properties. As the land slopes down, the profiles are kind of shielded against the rising land beyond the buildings and the treescape. Existing barn. And that shows the stables within the barn. Again, that will become apparent within the presentation. And that's the second barn where the single-storey, single property is proposed to go. and that's some hard stand into the front of that barn. This is the view of the site from the neighbouring Sang. It's pretty well screened by vegetation even at this time of year. This view into the site from the footpath, it is slightly more visible from the footpath because the footpath is immediately adjacent to the site. So, as seen, the proposal consists of a group of 5 dwellings consisting of 2 detached properties bookending a terrace of 3 with parking to the front and gardens to the rear. 1 detached single-storey dwelling is located on the other half of the site. A new access is proposed to the north of the existing access, which would be removed and the land reinstated. So the application site is located within the Greenbelt, where national and local policies seek to maintain its openness, and development is defined as inappropriate. Paragraph 149 of the NPPF lists development which is considered as an exception to this. However, in this case, the planning history is important. So part of building A was converted to stables under Class R of the General Permitted Development Order 2015, and this part of the building is considered to be previously developed land, or PDL. Another part of building A was subject to a prior approval application for 4 dwellings, and building B was subject to prior approval for 1 dwelling. If I go back to the presentation, I will need some context. Okay, so this was building A and this was building B. Case law has established that fallback position is a material planning consideration in the determination of applications, including those within the Greenbelt. These establish the principle of residential use on the site and therefore can be considered as very special circumstances to allow the principle of development. So now going to consider the impact of openness on the Greenbelt. The proposal will only be acceptable providing the proposal does not detrimentally affect the openness of the Greenbelt. The existing and proposed dimensions have been considered and compared, and these are summarised in a table contained on page 73 of the officer's report. Whilst there is a small increase in volume, there is a reduction in footprint and built form and hard standing. There is also a reduction in height. Therefore, in conclusion, the built form will not detrimentally affect the openness of the Greenbelt. Garden size is appropriate, and in the case of the 5 dwellings will be located on the existing hard standing. The garden of the bungalow has been significantly reduced to prevent spread of residential paraphernalia into the Greenbelt. It is concluded that the proposal would have limited visual impact over that of the existing buildings, and whilst the proposal will be visible from the neighbouring footpath and adjoining Sang to the south, these views will be partially obscured by vegetation and no greater than the existing built form. Accordingly, the visual impact and impact on character of the area is considered acceptable. Highways have no objection following amendments and additional information regarding turning. A visitor parking space is included and all plots have parking which meets the council's parking standards. Biodiversity have no objection. In conclusion then, the planning history and case law establishes the principle of the proposal. The size and scale of the built form has been considered and replicates that already on site and would therefore not detrimentally affect the openness of the Greenbelt. The application is considered acceptable in all matters and subject to the change in condition 2 contained with the supplementary report. The application is before you for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So just to be clear on this, there is a fallback position of prior approval of 5 dwellings on this site. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Questions, members? Vice Chair. Councillor Virgo.
I'm sorry. I asked, sorry, Sarah, I asked on the site, I was just interested in land, in the drainage arrangements, actually. And I just wondered if you had any idea how they were going to do that, because there's 6 properties now, actually, in the middle of a field.
I don't have any indication in terms of drainage. I should have put on a our standard SUDS condition, because it's a minor application, we don't consult our SUDS department, so they don't need to submit any information regarding drainage to us.
Sorry,
Other questions?
Well, can I just have a supplementary? I'm surprised that we don't actually, because this is in the middle of a field, and now we've increased it to 6 properties, and that's quite a lot of effluent, and we should know what's going on, frankly. I mean, maybe I should sum that up, Mr. Chairman.
They've got a fallback position of 5 dwellings, so this is materially only 1 increase. And as part of the prior approval applications, we would not have been able to consider foul drainage as part of that. We don't generally consider foul drainage as part of a planning application anyway, because it's considered under building regulations and the statutory drainage provider, and there are engineering solutions to deal with on-site disposal of foul effluent from dwellings in the form of septic tanks and the like. It's not uncommon for developments or properties out in the countryside to deal with, not be connected to the grid, and have a method of dealing with that.
Can I just add to that as well? You'll note from the table in the report that the footprint of the buildings is actually going to reduce by a nominal amount, 4 square metres, but more significantly, the area of hard standing on the site is actually going to decrease by 79%. So there should, in terms of runoff and drainage to the site, be an improvement rather than a worsening of the situation.
Any other questions? Councillor Brossard, Vice Chair.
A question for our highways officer. 9.37 makes reference to access for a fire tender. I know it's an unadopted road, and I'm sure that Councillor Hayes will have a question to ask about refuse collection, so I won't steal her thunder. Can I ask, with the 9.37, the fire tender, is that for both accesses? Because there are 2 separate accesses off the primary road.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Andy Wells, Highways. Yes, the swept paths for a fire tender have been checked for both the area that serves the properties on the western side and also the single property labelled House 6 on the eastern side. There is a Grass Creek turning head shown in front or to the north of the parking for house number 1, and there is also a turning area shown adjacent to the tandem parking spaces for house number 6, both of which have been tracked for a fire tender and shown to be acceptable.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 77 as amended by the supplementary report on 11 and 12. Barbara, seconder. Thank you. Members, as you heard, this application is before us for 6 properties. However, there is a fallback position on this at 5 properties anyway. And I think the telling point on this, as far as the green belt is concerned, is the significant reduction in hard standing of minus 2,793 square metres, which I think is quite important for us to consider. The height and the scale of the buildings are outlined on the report, as the officer has shown you, and there is you're seeing that there is on the page 72 shows quite clearly the existing structures and the proposed structures, and it's not an awful lot bigger in either term. Second, wish to speak?
Chairman, only very briefly to reinforce what you said. I thought the site visit on Saturday was particularly beneficial in understanding the relationship of the current buildings in terms of the access road that's going to be deleted and the two new access roads that are being created. I think it's an effective use of currently what one would describe as redundant land, so I will be supporting it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Oh, all those in... Oh, sorry, Councillor Ballyman.
Thank you. I'll be supporting it, but I just wanted to point something out. I get the feeling and I understand why residents are sometimes concerned. Earlier today, this evening, we actually approved a so-called agricultural ban. This is an agricultural ban that has now been in the green belt, that has now been turned into residential. I know there's a fallback and all that, but I just think we need to be mindful of things like this and the continuous development in our green belt area.
Thank you. Any other member? Okay. You will see, and thank you for Councillor Badibo for making the point, which is why we put the condition on the previous application as to, should it not be used for agriculture, it would have to be demolished. That wasn't on this one, and so therefore that's what we have before us. All those in favour to approve, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. All right, we move on then to agenda item. Do you want me? Yeah, I think. No, this is where it gets complicated. We're now going to take agenda item 11.
Oh, right, okay. 11.
All right. And then we'll take agenda item 9. And then we'll take agenda item 10. So can we move on to agenda item 11, please? Right, which is 3 Ellenborough, which is on page 113 of your agenda papers. And that's Benjamin. Thank you, Benjamin. You're muted.
Apologies for that. Can you see the screen, please?
Yes, we can see it very clear. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. This application is for a part 2-storey, part single-storey extension to the rear of 3 Ellenborough Close. The application has been referred to the Planning Committee on the request of Councillor Dudley on the grounds of it being overbearing and unneighbourly. Next slide. The dwelling, outlined in red, is a semi-detached property which falls within the defined settlement area. The site plan on the screen shows the footprint of the proposal, which would extend to the southwest of the property. There has recently been an application on the site for a similar development under application reference 21/00568/full. This application was refused under delegated powers on the basis that the proposed 2-storey element was out of keeping with the host dwelling and the traditional character within the surrounding area. The proposal included a similar single-storey extension, which was not included within the reasons for refusal, and a first-floor extension which protruded beyond the sidewall of the dwelling, included a projecting overhang and a flat roof form. Next slide. The existing building is 2-storey, with a single-storey garage to the south linking to its neighbours. As you can see, the neighbouring property has a small gabled projection on the rear of the property shown here. If I just... Next slide. The proposed single-storey element would stretch nearly the width of the site and include a flat roof in keeping with the design of the existing garage. The proposed 2-storey element would have a dual-pitched roof and would not extend beyond the side wall of the dwelling house. Next slide. The proposed extension would protrude beyond the rear elevation above the dwelling by a maximum of approximately 4.5 metres in depth, which equates to 3.8 metres in depth from the rear of number 4's extension, and would be set in from the boundary by approximately 0.2 metres at single-storey level. The 2-storey element would project the full 4.5 metres and be set in from the boundary by approximately 2.32 metres. Concerns have been raised by both the neighbouring property and the ward councillor as to the possible overbearing impact of the proposal, in particular the 2-storey element. Further concern was also raised in regards to the possible loss of light as a result of the proposal. The scheme before you has been amended from the original submission to include a hipped roof and omit a projecting first floor element. Next slide. This screen shows the comparison between the existing and proposed ground floor plans. It is worth noting that under permitted development, the applicant would be able to construct an extension measuring 3 metres in depth or potentially 6 metres with a prior approval. Although this would be required to be separated from the boundary by a similar amount and would not protrude beyond the side wall of the original dwelling house. It is also worth noting that a similar positioned single-storey extension under permitted development could have a maximum height of 4.4 metres, sloping down to 3 metres at the eaves, whereas the proposal before you has a maximum height of 2.5 metres. Next slide. The plans on the screen shows the comparison between the existing and proposed first floor plans. There'll be one side window proposed at first floor level, facing number 4 Ellenborough Close, and this will be conditioned to be obscurely glazed with a minimum of Pilkington level 3 and non-opening with the exception of a fanlight below 1.7 metres of the floor of the room the window is installed into. Next slide. To support their application, the applicant has submitted a daylight and sunlight assessment, extracts of which are on the screen now. This assessment was based on the superseded design, although, as the amendments comprise reductions in the scale of development, it is not considered that the amended proposal would be unfaithful to this assessment. According to paragraph 2.217 of the BRE standards, Site Layout Planning for Daylight and Sunlight, a Guide to Good Practice, if the centre of a main window of the next door property lies on the extension side of both these 45-degree lines, then the extension may well cause a significant reduction in the skylight received by the window. In this instance, the vertical 45-degree line has been demonstrated to not pass the centre of the closest neighbouring window opening in question. Whilst a horizontal test has not been submitted, it was deemed not required. Using the amended plans, the officer checked the proposal and confirms that the development would also pass the horizontal test. As far as the impact on number 4 Ellenborough Close, the single-storey element would fail the 45-degree test in the far corner. However, in line with paragraph 9.23 of the officer's report, it is unlikely that the development would have a detrimental impact on light received to the neighbouring property to a degree that would warrant refusal. Next slide. On the screen is the proposed parking plan for the development. It is worth noting that the existing property benefits from a single garage and one parking space to the front of the property. This being said, the existing garage fails to comply with the measurements set out in the parking standards SPD, so is discounted. The proposal seeks to provide an additional bedroom at first floor level, totaling 4 bedrooms within the property. The threshold of additional parking has been exceeded, and as such, the applicant is only required to provide one additional space over the existing situation. Therefore, the provision of 2 parking spaces within the property is required, and in this case has been demonstrated. The parking plan shows 3 spaces to be accommodated within the site, which is above the requirements of the parking standards. It is also noted that the dedicated cycle bin storage has not been requested in line with Highways comments, as the dwelling house is an existing planning unit, and as such this would not be reasonable to condition. Next slide. On the screen, we now have some photos of the application site. This left photo shows the development number 3 Ellenborough Close, with a more defined idea of what the neighbouring extension looks like. On the right, you have the neighbour number 2 Ellenborough Close, which is set back from this application, and the bottom photo shows a greater understanding of the depth of that projection on the neighbouring property number 4. These are some photos taken from, on the left, number 4 Ellenborough Close. This is looking towards the application site, however, is not facing away. On the right side at the top, you have from the street, as you'll see, the 2-storey element would be visible. However, as it would not project beyond the sidewall, it is not considered that it would harm the street scene. And finally, a wider street scene photo is available on the bottom right, which was taken from the road to the south. Next slide. Overall, the amended proposal represents an appropriate addition to the property, acceptable in principle, and one which would not result in an adverse impact on the character of the existing dwelling, surrounding area, highway safety, or the residential amenity of the occupiers of the neighbouring properties. The proposal was found to be compliant with SAFE policy EN20 of the Bracknell Forest Local Plan 2002, policies M9, CS7 and CS23 of the Core Strategy Development Plan document 2008, policies HO4, HO7 and HO8 of the Bracknell Town Neighbourhood Plan, the Council's Parking Standards SPD and Design SPD, and the MPPF 2021. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in section 11 of the committee report and the updated condition on page 15 of the supplementary report. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Members, do you have any questions? Vice Chair.
Missed it, in which case I apologise, but on page 114, where is it, section 4.1, an earlier application was refused earlier this year, in fact, on the grounds of design. How does this application differ from the earlier one that was refused?
So if I get up the previous application, one second. Not the previous application, sorry, the proposed scheme. The previous application included a box dormer, apologies. The previous application included a two-story element which had a flat roof and extended out beyond the sidewall of the dwelling house, which is shown by the laser pointer here. The dormer was not in keeping in terms of its roof form nor the scale of the development and was clearly visible from the street scene, which was out of keeping with the character of the area, as none of the rear additions are visible from the street scene.
Any other questions, members? Okay, I've got a question. Benjamin, you were talking about the horizontal lights.
Yep.
Rather than the vertical light. I think I've got those the right way round. And you confirmed that, in fact, on the horizontal, it would fail the light test.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So the corner, which is this corner here of the single story element, would fail the 45-degree horizontal assessment, which was calculated using the proposed floor plan. If I get back to the, here we go. So the far corner would fail, however, most of it would be acceptable. The BRE standards states that if both the lines cross the centre of the nearest window or nearest opening, then it would be considered to have a detrimental impact. In this instance, as it was just the furthest corner and the height of the extension is only 2.3 meters in height, it was not seen that there would be a detrimental impact on light.
Okay.
Significant
A
enough
yes or
to
no
warrant
would have been
refusal.
suffice, actually.
Apologies.
That's all right. Okay, fine. And members came to the site visit on Saturday, and you can confirm, can't you, that south on this plan is directly as in showing on the arrow. Is that correct?
South is where the arrow is showing, correct.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions, members? Okay, as there's no other questions, it falls to me to move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 92.
And supplementary page 13.
As amended by page 13 of the supplementary report. Quite a time when we have a page 13 on a supplementary report, isn't it? If I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ballybo. Members, this application has been amended quite considerably since it first came in, and it was quite rightly refused. I actually called this to committee, and I did advise the ward member, Councillor Angel, in this case, that I was doing so, and he agreed with me. My concern on this one is the loss of light to number 4. You will see that on here that number 4 is set back from the proposed single-story extension, which will cause severe overshadowing because it's because the sun rises and sets from the south, east to west. It would suffer quite considerably, and I thank you to those members that came to the site visit on Saturday to witness exactly that. So, seconder wish to speak? Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Brossard.
Chairman, I thought, as you said, Chairman, the site visit was particularly helpful actually in understanding the relationship, given, of course, that the property next door is a semi-detached. So in terms of the distance, that does have to be taken into account. I'm also mindful when we saw the photographs and when we did the site visit, that the fence height is 1.8 metres. The single-storey rear extension is actually 2.9 metres. It's an increase in height of 1.1 metres, and I do feel that is a significant height impact on the next door neighbours, given that I believe that their window, the French windows, or however you describe them, appears to be a lounge. So I do think, in my view, that would have an impact on them that would be disadvantageous for them. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other member wish to speak? No. Okay, as it's only myself and the Vice Chair have spoken, I will put it to the vote and give you notice that I do have an alternative motion if this one should fall. All those in favour to approve, please show. And those against? The motion falls. Benjamin, do you have alternative motion? Thank you.
There you go, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can everybody see that?
Behind you as well.
Yes, behind. I'll just let you. I'll just let you read that. Does anybody need more time? Do I have a seconder for this application? For this, thank you. Would anybody? I've said everything I need to say on it. Does anybody else wish to speak? All those in favour to refuse on the blue sheet, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and against 1. The motion's carried. Thank you. Right, now we move back to agenda item 9.
Yeah. It's either 10 or 9. I think it's the bus station.
And I think you want to leave. Are you going to, we are quora if you want to leave, unless you want to come back for agenda item 10. Or are you not leaving and just not taking part? No, number 9. No. I'm doing this for Indy. It's all right. Okay. For the record, Councillor Hayden is leaving the chamber. Thank you. Just to point out, on page 87 on your agenda, it says agenda item 9 at the top, and it is agenda item 9. But if you look on the report at the top left hand, it says 8. That's incorrect. It is number 9. Okay. Thank you, Margaret. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Share my screen if that's visible to everybody. Thank you. As members will recall, this application was considered by the Advisory Planning Committee in February of this year, where it was recommended that, subject to the completion of a legal agreement under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act to secure various planning obligations, the Assistant Director of Planning should approve the application subject to conditions. A financial viability assessment has been prepared since the application was considered by the Advisory Planning Committee, and this assessment concludes that the scheme shows a negative residual value. The viability assessment has been independently reviewed, and this review has concluded that the scheme can provide still the 25% affordable housing, but cannot support the previously agreed affordable housing mix of 70% affordable rented units and 30% intermediate housing. The committee is therefore being asked to agree a change in the requirements of the Section 106 agreement to be prepared before planning permission is granted to secure the 25% affordable housing as intermediate housing. No other changes to the previously considered scheme are being proposed. A supplementary report has been prepared, and the recommendation is set out in the main report and is a repeat of the recommendation and conditions considered by the Planning Advisory Committee in February. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Margaret. One question from me is, can you confirm that this change in the affordable housing mix has been supported by a viability statement? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, Councillor Virgo.
Hi, Margaret. Could you explain what intermediate... Sorry?
It's part rent, part buy.
Ah.
Or a mix of.
Sorry, Chair.
Margaret?
If I could step in, intermediate housing is generally provided as shared ownership, where it is part owned and then part rented through a provider. But it can also include intermediate rent, which is rent that is still set below market rent level, but is not as subsidised as affordable rent. But it is still classed as affordable housing.
So it can be 80% of market, or it can be 55%, whereas social rent is 25.
It can be, yes,
Thank
it
you
is a
very much,
different
Councillor
rent level,
Birch.
yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, as there's no other questions, I'll move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 108 and supported by the supplementary report on pages 14 and 15. Members, it's unfortunate, isn't it, when we have viability reports that come in that change our previous affordable housing structure and share. But I think it's the nature of the beast at the moment. We know how much building materials are costing at the moment, and I think we're going to be seeing more and more of these coming before us on viability grounds. I think it's still quite good that we're maintaining the percentage of intermediate housing, which does help our residents. Second, wish to speak?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. Only really to follow on from what you said, if I understand within the report, there is the opportunity as time progresses to review the viability, and if necessary, there could be a change in the formula, which may be advantageous to us.
Yeah. Any other member wish to speak? All those in favour to approve, please show. Thank you very much. Indy, if you would like to leave the meeting now, we're going to deal with the item on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I will leave now.
All right, thank you very much indeed. I can confirm that Indy has left and we've been joined by Shelley. Thank you, Shelley.
Hi.
Sorry to have kept you waiting.
Not a problem at all. I'm just going to share my screen. If you can let me know when you see it.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
can
here's the application
yeah,
at
can see
12
that.
Brewmakers. Good, excellent. Okay, so 12 Brewmakers is a detached 4-bedroom property with a detached garage located in the Greenways Character Study area in Sandhurst. So I'm going to show you here the existing elevations. Let me just, okay, so you've got the existing elevations of the property. We've got the proposal here, the proposed elevations. Do them there, so you've got them there. So the proposal is for a single-storey front extension and 2-storey front, side and rear extension and single-storey rear extension to form an annex. Okay, this application has been reported to the committee due to it having more than 5 objections. So since the original submission, amendments have been made to allow the design to be more in keeping with the character of the area. A full list of these amendments are in the officer report. Some of these design changes include the roof pitch and the hipped gable element. So here, okay. To the eaves level so that it meets the top of the window level here, top of the window level. To the fenestration to again be more characteristic of the area, and to the proposed materials so that they are facing brick at ground floor level and render at first floor level. Okay. Do here. Oops, oh, excuse me, sorry. Let's do it there. So the proposal includes an increase in roof height of 0.75 metres. However, a street scene elevation has been provided, which shows the dwelling will not exceed the height of neighbouring properties. So you can see that there. Do that. Oh, sorry, let's do that there. The proposal will include 2 additional bedrooms, one at ground floor level and one in the roof. I'm just going to zoom out there so you can see that then. Okay, so it will include 2 additional bedrooms, 1 at ground floor level and 1 in the roof. A parking plan has been submitted showing 3 parking spaces in accordance with the parking standards SPD. Oh, excuse me, sorry now. Bring that up. We have the parking plan there showing the 3 parking spaces. A condition will be attached that restricts the use of the rear annex to accommodation ancillary to the dwelling house. So let's just have a look at the photos. Here. So here you've got the existing property and neighbouring properties, both of which have been extended. So we have other properties that have been extended, including the neighbouring properties. We also have at number 18 here, 18 Broomacres, which has a 2-storey side extension. And then if we go further down, okay, we just do that there. Sorry, it's not allowing me to move the cursor. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Let's do that there. Okay. And then, sorry, let's just do here. I'm just going to do them like this here. Okay, so we've got number 18 Broomacres with a 2-storey side extension. And then we have other properties which also are rendered, including the property opposite and another property along the street. With regards to the impact on neighbouring property, the proposal will not result in a loss of light or be overbearing. There is a 1st floor window on the side elevation of number 10 that overlooks the application site. However, this window is to a bathroom. In terms of overlooking, the rear dormer will have no greater impact than the existing 1st floor windows. It is therefore recommended to approve the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions, members? Councillor Brossard, Vice Chair.
Yep. Shelley, can you bring up the, I know there's the annex in the rear. Can you actually just, I know there's a condition obviously that prevents it from being subdivided to provide additional over and above the accommodation. What is actually the purpose of the annex, can I ask?
Sorry, if I'm just going to bring that up there so you can see again. So the purpose of the annex here, okay, let's do that then. So here is just the purpose of the annex is just to provide additional accommodation. You've got those 2 bedrooms there. As such, yes, it will be an annex, but it will be ancillary to the dwelling house. So here, yes, you've got the 2 bedrooms, the bathroom, the living room and the kitchen. But this annex will, like I say, be conditioned to be ancillary to the main dwelling house.
So in that case then, Shelley, really a point of clarification, because I know that in the agenda it made reference initially to becoming a 6-bedroom property with 1 bedroom at the 1st floor and 1 bedroom in the loft space. The loft space, presumably, that hasn't now been developed, or has it been?
At the moment, it hasn't been developed, so the proposal is for a bedroom in the roof. So I'm sorry, the previous comments were incorrect. The bedroom, there is an existing bedroom at ground floor level. Okay, so an existing bedroom at ground floor level. Therefore, with the proposal now is going to have 2 bedrooms at ground floor level. Therefore, 1 additional bedroom, and we're going to have the bedroom in the roof.
Will that then, Shelley, make it a 7-bedroom property?
And see here, you're starting, so you started with a 4-bedroom. Okay, so you started with your 4-bedroom, and then you've got here. So at the moment, we've got 1, 2. No, so 1, 2. We've got 3, 4, 5, and 6.
And so, and the loft.
This is the loft here, the 2nd floor plan.
I'll ask,
Am I
On the second floor, there are still 4 bedrooms, aren't there?
on the second floor? Yeah, you've just got the 1 bedroom.
All right, sorry. All right, the first floor.
On the first floor.
Upstairs
So
one
on the
flight.
so on the first floor we've got the 4 bedrooms. Yes.
Right, so if you've got 4 bedrooms there, 2 bedrooms in the annex, and a bedroom in the loft, that's 7
Yes, am I getting that? So no. So we've
in the
got
annex.
so 2 bedrooms at the ground floor level. 2.
Yeah. 4 in there.
Oh dear. 3, 4, 5.
6.
3, 4, 5, 6.
And then 1 in the loft. 7.
Okay. Let us put this together. So
Okay.
yeah.
Not that it makes any difference to the parking, because we can only ask for 3.
I just think
I'm thinking, am I going mad? But
it's
shall
just
we
that
just do that?
Shelley, having read the agenda, I thought it was important really to get
No, of
clarification.
course.
I thought there was 4 bedrooms in the first floor.
It's 3.
No, so you've got 3 bedrooms.
1,
Can you see?
2,
3.
3.
Okay.
Oh, there's how many
Yeah,
bathrooms
so
are
there's
there?
There's
Oh, it's
3
all bathrooms. Sorry. Okay.
They're
All right.
bathrooms. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All
So
right.
we've agreed then. So 2
lots
at
of
ground
bathrooms.
floor level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't need a recount.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got 6 bedrooms.
Right,
All right.
fine,
Okay. Thank you.
Right, in that case,
Any other
thank you.
questions, members? Okay. Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Is this, or will this require, this is an HMO, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Yes.
The application has submitted on a householder application form and for a single dwelling house. Yes.
There you go, HMO.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, did you have a question?
Exactly the same as Councillor Hayes. Is this an HMO? Thank you, Shelley.
No, it's not being applied for as an HMO. Any other questions? Councillor Birch.
Could I'm seeing some of the representations. Could you just show me, please, the roof heights in relationship to because I'm looking on Google Earth, and I've got this number 12 in the middle between 2 rather large, well-extended places, but I notice in representations they say the pitch height or the roof height will be out of character. So I just want to satisfy for myself.
Certainly here, the roof height has been lowered. Obviously, changes have been made to the roof pitch. So as such, now we have obviously the street scene elevation, and this is what the property will look like next to those 2 neighbouring properties. So that's why the street scene elevation was requested, so that we can see exactly what it's going to look like next to those 2 properties.
Thank you, you've clarified that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 121,
Supplementary page 15.
and as amended by the supplementary report on page 15. If I have a seconder. Thank you very much. Members, this is a property that is being extended, and I think it's in amongst properties, as we saw from the officer's report, that many properties in this road have been extended similarly. So I think that with the roof height that now has been slightly lowered with the officers negotiating with the applicant, I think it now it fulfils all of our policy needs. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Yeah, very briefly, Chairman, just to sum up. This is an estate that really built in the 1950s that has been really expanded, not in terms of the estate, but in terms of the number of properties. That bungalows became small houses became large houses, and we now have, for what it's worth, the second property, I believe, that will be going to 6 bedrooms. That said, what I am pleased about is the discussions and the negotiations between the case officer and also the applicant in terms of the excess of glazing, which has now been reduced, and also the window frames where they wanted with the extension to have a different colour design, and now they've agreed to match the existing. I think in terms of the aesthetics, the cosmetics and such like, I think this shows the benefit of negotiating with an applicant to achieve achieve what I believe will be a sympathetic outcome, given that it will still be a very large property, but it probably won't be the last one that we see coming before us that will become larger and larger. But that's the way it is. It's capitalism. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other member wish to speak? All those in favour to approve, please show. And those against, the motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And can you let us know, please, when we're offline? I declare the meeting closed.
We are now offline.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, members, and thank you for. It could have been a lot longer and a lot later, so well done. And I wish you all a very happy Christmas. And there's one mince pie that needs to be eaten.